Hello, and welcome to OnSurviving. My name is Megan, and I'm a survivor.
My name is Nobly, and I am a survivor.
Together, we're bringing OnSurviving to the world because it matters.
It matters to me because alongside the potent fears of our frail hearts is so much hurt, loss, and trust issues that I often had to navigate through all alone with very little resources and zero trust. I am passionate about doing this project because I get to tell my story and be that trusting person to be there and help with the resources and hopefully make a difference in people's process of surviving.
And it matters to me because I want others to recognize the deep strength and rich humanity involved in every step in the process of surviving the tragedies life brings many of us. I suffered silently and alone for far too long, and I want to help others to find hope more quickly and readily and feel and be less alone in the process of surviving.
OnSurviving matters, you matter, and we matter.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. It's good to be here today. And what I think is a really, really important month, Suicide Prevention Month, and this week in particular, being about awareness of suicide and suicide prevention. In this program today, we are going to share stories about each of our struggles with wanting to die. And we'll also talk about ways all of us can help others who may be having similar feelings in their lives. And some people listening may, in fact, be feeling that way too, or have felt that way recently. So I want to just caution everyone, as we always do, we speak frankly about these issues, and sometimes that can trigger rough memories, bring up some trauma of our own, and really send us into a tough time. So I want to remind you that if you're having that response, you are in charge of this time. You can turn it off. Please do that. Or, pace yourself. You can always come back if you want to listen more. And in the meantime, also reach out for if you have somebody in your life that's a great support for you, reach out to them. And if you're feeling like not comfortable reaching out to somebody or feeling like there just isn't anyone you can really talk to comfortably, I want to remind you that there's an important resource that is available to anyone, anywhere, anytime in this country. And that is a national suicide and crisis hotline. You can dial 988. That is all you need to dial. You can actually even text there. I do want to show folks who are watching that there are a few other specialty crisis lines that you can turn to as well. The Trevor Project has the LGBTQ crisis hotline. There's a trans lifeline. There are people who are really struggling with maybe a recent disaster. There have been a lot of big natural disasters recently. So there's a disaster distress hotline, a veterans crisis line. And then there's a text-only crisis line. So, and then there are lots of local resources as well, but these are all national resources. So I encourage you to reach out wherever feels most comfortable for you. If you're feeling like you could use some extra help, some anonymous help, it is there for you anytime you need it. So I'll stop sharing that now.
Thank you, Megan.
Yeah.
And okay, I would like to have our guests join us. Welcome, Melanie McKibben. Melanie is a peer support specialist at a nonprofit organization in Oregon. It's called CHANCE, which stands for Communities Helping Addicts Negotiate Change Effectively. So Melanie, if you want to turn on your camera and your mic, that would be amazing.
Hi guys, how's it going?
Hi,
Hey.
Melanie. Welcome. I'm so glad that you're joining us today.
Thank you for having me here. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, it really is a pleasure, and I just love that you're coming, with your own stories, but also that tie to the addiction and recovery programming, which my story is deeply tied to my own recovery story. So really wonderful that you're bringing that here today. Just want to check in real quick before we how are you both showing up here today? This is a tough conversation. So just wanted to check in real quick how everyone's doing today.
It is definitely a very tough conversation, but my hope is by sharing my experience, will help others realize they are not alone. Because that's really what it comes down to, that there are always people who care and you matter. So
Beautiful, beautiful.
That is amazing, Melanie. I feel, passionate about the topic that we're doing today, because I am a survivor and because I think it's a very important topic. But physically, I'm having a bit of an allergy. My allergies have different plans for me. So I apologize in advance if I, cough, or if I, I'm happy to be here. So I just wanted to give everybody a heads up on that. And I also wanted to say that I work professionally with Melanie in the same area, in the same field, and she does incredible work. And I just want to give you an extra special thank you for that too, Mel.
well, thank you. Mwah.
So I would like to invite you to tell us a little bit more about yourself, Melanie, including your experiences with suicide ideations and attempts and thoughts and whatnot. So I'm going to let you have it and share your story with us today.
All right. Well, thank you, Nobly, and you are a wonderful blessing to our community as well. Like was said earlier, I'm a peer support specialist with Chance. We are located in Lynn County, Benton County, and Lincoln County, Oregon. We help those who struggle with mental health, substance use, and homelessness. So with, what got me involved with this organization was really wanting to help people overcome their struggles. Back in I've struggled with mental health my whole life, was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, then it changed to bipolar 1, PTSD, generalized anxiety disorder, insomnia, you name it. They diagnosed, and of course, through a bunch of medication that way. Excuse me, I have a cough too, so just bear with me. So a little bit about my background is, grew up in a very abusive, traumatic childhood. While my parents were not, addicts, drunks, they didn't drink, they didn't use drugs. There was just absolutely no love in that household and no nurturing. And just a lot of physical, mental, just a lot of abuse. So growing up, dealt with that and just was always very lost. And always felt out of place. And then back in 2012, I pretty much had a mental breakdown. Just the relationship had ended. I felt like I had no friends. The friends I did, I was an alcoholic, was drinking constantly just to numb the pain. The friends that I thought I had were only around if I was at the bar buying drinks, being Miss Social Butterfly. I go home, and be by myself. And it was just such a lonely feeling. And then at the time, was struggling, with undiagnosed depression, undiagnosed PTSD, because, was having these flashbacks, these nightmares. And it was just bringing up all of these feelings that I had stuffed for so long. And it was just one thing after another. So I started planning. I did not want to live anymore. And I was done with life. No one cared about me. I didn't care about anyone. I just, felt like the world would be a better place if there was no Melanie in it. I planned, I looked at different ways, researched, spent a couple of months. So this wasn't, like, uh, spur of the moment decision. I searched different ways until, I came up with a cute couple that I'm a wuss when it comes to pain, and just came up with a few. And then I went to the coast. I lived in one part of the coast. I went up north to Lincoln City, checked into a hotel, tried to drink myself to death with 2.5 gallons of Wild Turkey 101, a couple of bottles of wine. That did not work. So then I attempted, there were a couple other methods I had tried. There is no reason I should be here right now. And then towards the end of this crisis I was in, I was on the beach, I was just, okay, I'm going to put it in the powers that be hands and just walk into the ocean with the intention of the ocean just taking me out to sea and never being around again. And if anyone knows the Oregon coast, it's a rough coast. There's a lot of rip currents, and it just kept on pushing the coast. The waves just kept on pushing me back to shore, back to shore. So finally, I had this, I don't know, other than the higher power. I just had this voice, go to the emergency room. Just go to the emergency room. And, so I walked it was probably about 4 or 5 mile walk from one end of Lincoln City all the way to the other in the middle of the night, pouring down rain. This was in March, and made it to the emergency room and explained to them, what I was feeling at the time. And the nurses there were just so amazing, so compassionate. And then, it was later, they got in touch with our mental health hospital at Samaritan in Corvallis, and was there for quite some time, about 3 or 4 weeks. Got on medication, was doing good. The staff there was great. They really, finally I realized, okay, there are people who care. I am not losing my freaking mind. I have mental health issues that have never been addressed. I have had a traumatic childhood. This isn't my fault. And so, was put on a bunch of different medication. I could have gone back to work on the coast, but I knew I needed to make a change. I needed to quit drinking. And the coast and I were drinking buddies, my friends there. I knew I would not be able to stop drinking there. So went into transitional living in Corvallis, wonderful facility there. Where still received counseling and treatment, was in treatment for a while. And finally, ended up getting my own place, moved out of transitional. So then, oh, I got this, stopped treatment, stopped counseling. Then I started using and just went down, ended up having pretty much another mental health, another crisis. A lot of it was spurred on by my roommate at the time, but I really felt like I was going crazy. People were after me. And once again, I just wanted to stop. But thankfully at this time, I recognized that it was a crisis and that this too shall pass. I just need to get to the emergency room. And that's what I did. And it was Thanksgiving of 2014. My boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband, and he is an amazing support. He took me to the hospital, And I stayed in the emergency room for 5 days because it was holiday. The hospital, the mental health hospital, didn't have any openings. So, it was a waiting game. But during that time, once got transported to the mental health hospital, still received an excellent level of care, and then was diagnosed with bipolar 1, which included psychosis, which was, also experiencing at the time. They changed my medication, was released, and just went through a lot of counseling with the mental health department in a different county than the one I'm in. They were amazing. And, I struggled with substances on and off because I was looking for something to numb that pain. I still could not let go of that pain. I still could not, I still wanted to die. Even though I wasn't attempting, I did not want to wake up in the morning. I wanted to die. And that continued for many years until, and even, my husband doesn't know that, but he will now. There were times even when we were living together, when I'd wake up, it's like, shit, I'm alive. Why? Why do I have to still lay here suffering? I was in the height of my addiction as well. And ended up, there was a point in time where, kind of ended up the house ended up getting raided. But that forced me into a really good addiction treatment center where I met an amazing counselor who taught me, for one, the things she did, and I'll forever love her for this, is I remember one time she's like, I love you. I'm like, how do you love me? You don't even know me. She's like, I love you. And I pushed back a lot. But then, after talking with her and just spending a lot of time with her, working with her and doing the hard work, I learned to love myself. And I learned that, yes, so many people go through traumatic experiences and we don't know how to handle it. We put the blames on ourselves, and there's so many people in this world hurting. And are either, if they're not hurting so much, they're just completely numb. And I'd rather feel pain than nothing at all. As I think there's a song lyric that discusses that. And it's been a struggle. But I will say, after, I have some really good friends. Nobly is one of my dearest friends. We check in on each other. I have another really good friend from my old job where, we have talked about our depression and our mental health, and we check on each other at least 2-3 times a week. If we don't hear from each other within a week, we're like, okay, what's going on? And we check, hey, how's your mental health today? How are you today? What are you doing for self-care? My husband, once again, too, he is a huge support, and he asks, how's your mental health? Are you okay? You would tell me if you're not okay, right? Yes, I would. And still struggle with depression, but knowing that surrounded by people who love, who care, has really taught me how to love and care for myself, and even more importantly, love and care for others and give me purpose. And that, I think, is what has always been lacking in my life, is not having that defined purpose. And so, yeah, there's my story. And of course, video issues again. There we go.
Thank you so much, Melanie. I appreciate you sharing your story. It's very powerful, and the similarities that I saw was that feeling of just complete like aloneness and despair, and feeling like it doesn't really matter if I'm here or not, and not really feeling like I had anybody that I could express how I felt, and nobody checked on me. You know what I mean? At this time in my life, nobody checked on me. So I identified with that. And then just the despair of not wanting to wake up in the morning, you know, it's like, I've felt that a lot, like, why did I fucking wake up? You know what I mean? And so I related with that. And just in my household as a child, it was my parents were responsible for clothing me and feeding me and, you know, making sure I was housed and getting me to school and to the doctor. But I also was lacking that, you know, comforting love that I think, you know, that I needed. So what about you, Megan? Did you see some similarities in there that you related to?
Yeah, a number of things. I also had a couple of questions. I hope you don't mind if I ask them along the way. Of course, you don't have to answer if there's anything I ask that you don't feel comfortable with, but I want to start and echo that part about that sense of feeling so alone. I just remember, especially the first time. So, you know, I've written and talked a lot about that. For me, there was one actual attempt, and then there was another time where I white knuckled not getting my gun, um, and um, and so was very close there, and lots of other thoughts and stuff along the way, that repeated thought. You said, you know, you wake up and no, believe you had it too. One of mine used to be in the later years when I was really pretty deep in my alcoholism. um I but I was so I really wanted to die. That was after my daughter died. I really wanted to, and I just, um, and I wouldn't, because I had this belief that that I wouldn't get to be with her in the afterlife, and so I had this powerful reason not to, but yet this sense of deep, desperate desire to die. So, and I was traveling a lot for work, and every time I got on a plane, I wished it would crash. I prayed for it to crash, which is a horrible thing because there's other lives in there too, but that's not what I was thinking of. I was thinking about how every day was painful, desperately painful to be here. But I had actually, so that's in my later part. The first, that was in my early 40s. In my actual attempt was at 19, and it was a really similar sense to what you described, Melanie, because I didn't know what was going on with me either. Also had childhood abuse, and I had PTSD. I was having panic attacks. I had no idea what they were. This like desperate, like panic, like running it, and all the flashbacks, and had no idea what was going on until my boyfriend discovered me and took me to the emergency room. So that emergency room contact, and then going and being hospitalized and seeing, getting psychiatric care. That's what also when I learned about those things. So, oh, right. I'm because one of the things, so that, sorry, my brain just all of a sudden went in 1,000 places. I'll slow down. So what I was thinking was, so often we don't talk about these things, right? I was raised with it. This is not polite conversation. You don't share this. This is your quote unquote dirty laundry. And I think that had a really bad result for me, because I felt like I had done something wrong, and that there was something wrong with me, not what was done to me. and that what I was going through was really natural human response. And also had that same experience you, Melanie, later. Yeah, still like really reeling and not healed from all of this stuff. I think healing is an ongoing, probably lifetime process, not, by the way, to tamp out anybody's sense of hope, because I feel the best I have probably in my entire life now, and stronger. I understand, I've processed a lot of those things. It doesn't mean I won't have days I sit down and I just need to be down and cry, but I get it now, and I get when I'm in crisis, and I get what the tools are out there, so I can go ahead and access them. For me, you went back to the emergency room, Melanie. I called the crisis line. And I called the crisis line and called the crisis line and called the crisis line. And when I was really bad, they said they helped me find a local crisis clinic that I walked several miles to get to. So again, that picture of you walking that 4 to 5 miles to the emergency room, I felt like this like kindred space, with you, like walking those miles was, I don't know. I don't know about you, how you felt walking in those miles, but I felt still desperate. But there was at least this like glimmer of hope that somebody was going to maybe hold my hand or, and that it just wouldn't be so alone. So that's a biggie. So I was going to ask you, I'm thinking about that part where I said I just really didn't understand that. You said you had undiagnosed PTSD. I was curious if you had any idea, like what was happening to you. Had you been exposed to that kind of thing before, or was it all just this like sense of, yeah, anyway, I'll stop there.
So when I was about 12 years old, I was hospitalized in another psychiatric hospital in South Carolina. Because I was hospitalized there for, I want to say 60 days for depression. There was no, suicide attempts or anything like that. My mother and stepfather, I'll put it like this, it was highly recommended to them that they get me into this facility. I don't remember all the details. I was like 12, or may not even been 12 then. And growing up into adulthood, getting older, just thought all these feelings were normal. I really didn't know much about mental health. I remember being in that facility. I remember, as odd as this is, having a great, not a great time, but just a really good time for once being able to relax. And this was when I was 12, and I did not want to leave. But once again, didn't know much about it. I knew that I had a lot of issues, but I thought they were just my issues to carry on my own. And, I knew, like with the boyfriend that ended the relationship with, when I tried to talk to him about it, he flat out told me he didn't want to hear. So if he doesn't want to hear about, why I'm having these nightmares, why I can't stand to have him touch me at some point, who will? Why should I bother seeking help, especially when, I didn't know mental health clinics existed. I didn't have health insurance. Didn't know that you could go to, an emergency room when you were in crisis. There was not enough information that was, public during this time. And that's why I really think there was some, higher power creator. There was someone there guiding me, because I didn't know. And then once, the psychiatrist at the hospital well, this is, once told in my story, well, this is what you're experiencing. This is what's going on. It was like an aha moment almost. And yeah, it's
So that ended up being probably one of many, maybe at least a number of turning points
yes,
for you.
yeah,
You got connected, you learned some about the resources that were
mhm,
available to you, about what was going on with you.
yes,
Yeah. So definitely heard, it's a process, right?
oh,
Big process for me. Nobly, I know it was for you too, right? Yeah. So a number of turning points along the way. Um, uh, I'm curious, and you also another turning point I think I heard for you was getting your medication right, right?
um,
Yeah,
so actually, getting on medication, because my first time there, with mental health meds, it can take a while to get it right.
yeah,
But was misdiagnosed at the first time because uh, they I've never experienced, or the right questions were not being asked. So it's just diagnosed with major depressive disorder. And then later on, at my second stay at the hospital, the right questions were asked, and then they changed the diagnosis to bipolar 1. And the medications, it was a trial and error, but they are definitely, where they need to be right now. So,
yeah,
and it took a while. I mean, I've been dealing with, trying to work on my mental health since 2012. I would say back in 2018 or 2019 is when finally, started seeing some better changes in my mood and how I handle things, not overreacting, not going from a manic state where all the way down to those awful depressive lows. Because that's what gets you.
yeah. Oh, for sure. And we had on several episodes ago, but we had a good friend of mine who also lives with bipolar 1 disorder. And I know medicine for getting the right diagnosis and the right medication, because the right medication just wasn't available.
Mhm.
For a while until it was finally created and find something would actually help. So for folks who may not actually have feel confident in what's going on with their mental health, being able to go back and maybe even see multiple people and make sure you're getting the right diagnosis, the right medication, and maybe having some patience to and some support along the way. Do you have
You know,
support along the way while
Yeah.
you're dealing with all the medication?
Not so much then, but you know, I had with Benton County Health Department mental health. I had an amazing psychiatrist. He would actually listen. Okay, this is what I don't like about this medication. This is what I like. This is how it's affecting me. And he was one of those, who would listen, take, you know, what I would say, what I'm experiencing and into consideration, and we would adjust it, as needed. The biggest thing I could say when it comes to medication and mental health is advocating for yourself. If you have a psychiatrist or a counselor who you feel is, you know, not listening, advocate, see about getting a new one. It's not always that easy, but keep trying and just don't give up. There are, it is out there. You just got to find that right person you really click with.
Right. Right.
And someone, who really listens, and there are that that's there.
It's really awesome that you had that and you were able to access it. I also, what stood out to me in your story, um, because I relate to it, was not having insurance. And in both of those periods of my life, I also didn't have insurance, wasn't getting regular care, because I simply couldn't afford it. And I didn't know if there was even something accessible to me without being able to pay for it out of pocket, without having good health insurance, because not all health insurance even takes care of it well. So I'm just curious if, when you're going through that, sounds like you have been able to get some ongoing treatment, care, and ha- how's that gone for you?
So definitely, if you are, because at the time, was a bartender, um, and if you're, if you're within certain income, like low income, definitely reach out to your county, state, see about getting on. Here we call it Oregon Health Plan. Basically, it's Medicaid. Never knew that existed until the hospitalization. Um, Also, if you don't qualify for that, go to your local mental health department, see if they offer sliding scales. A lot of places, like I know the mental health department I mentioned before, they had a sliding scale fee, which I utilized for a while.
Mm.
Um, right now, I do have company sponsored insurance, and I'm very fortunate to have that. Uh, and, we, insurance is really one of those, it's needed. It is definitely needed if you're going to get any kind of care. If you can't get it through, your employer, or, through yourself, see if I can't stress how important it is to at least see if you don't qualify for Medicaid, for your state's Medicaid. Um, and, because your mental health is vital.
Yeah. And that, especially when you're in that level of distress, it
Mhm.
seems to me many of us who have reached that point, I hear so often, deep roots in trauma, and mental health challenges, sometimes related to that, oftentimes related to that trauma. Childhood trauma is a big commonality I keep hearing.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, there's all sorts of different kinds of childhood trauma, but all amounts to the same thing, as something that, like, so oftentimes we don't get the care for, and that builds and things compound on top of it. Um, So definitely the professional care. I'm kind of moving into, like, thinking about things about that have been helpful, because we're all, I want to acknowledge, we're all in pretty good places in our lives, right? And I know, for one, when, I go back um 8 years, and I sitting there, I remember thinking, I am always going to feel this way. This is never going to change. This pain will never stop. I felt hopeless and desperately, desperately alone. And so one of the things that um, I I like to point out about where we are in our lives now, is that there are people right now who feel like we felt before, and that there really is hope. And it can be really hard to see and find, and that's why I keep encouraging folks to just, you know keep one foot in front of the other, keep reaching out. It's true that not everything you reach for is going to be there in the way that you want, but you keep reaching, that there will be something. We all are, I think, kind of case in point on that. We kept reaching for something whenever we had the courage to do that. The other thing that occurs to me as I was listening to you talk about that, I mean, whether it's dealing with trying to get your medication right or getting the right kind of support, that can all feel really demoralizing. And I remember I could barely get most of the time I didn't get myself to brush my teeth. I have major dental problems because of it. And, so that very, very basic thing, I barely showered. Just that very basic care was difficult. Now having to go through feeling like trying to get someone to care about me, can be just a really tall order, which kind of leads me to this next part, which is that I heard, as your story progressed, more social support, more friends, people, positive supports, your husband, which also became true for me in a couple of different ways. Also my husband, who didn't know how to do much, but he sure knew how to sit next to me and hold my hand. And holy moly, was that important. And then in meeting and in getting good relationships through people I met in AA, because my second time when my life was really at risk was actually not while I was using, it was while I was sober, because everything I had been trying to numb myself from came just crashing into me. And I was no more prepared to deal with it at that point than I was when I was drinking to get away from it. Right. So, and by then, by the way, I had already alienated most of my friends because I was a big old drunk. I mean, so severe that I would wake up in the middle of the night with DTs. I had to get a drink to stop. It would wake me up so I could get a drink so I wouldn't go into shock from withdrawal. But at any rate, it was very severe. So, and of course I was deeply depressed and had PTSD. And so and didn't feel like anyone cared or would care, or, knew I would say things to people and they'd just be like, oh, have you gone to therapy? I'm like, do you have some money for me? Come on. So not very helpful, not helpful. But if you want to, offer me, some help to treatment and with some, real means of getting there, that would be helpful. But anyway, that's veering into not helpful. But what I was thinking is what was really helpful in actually recovering and getting from that point to here were the friends who were also sober, maybe struggling themselves. In fact, many struggling themselves, but somehow that struggle together was energizing and filled me with hope. So curious about your thoughts on that aspect.
So if it wasn't for my support system and my friends, who knows where it would be now? Because, when you develop a really good, strong support system by people who know what you have experienced, people who you can be honest with, and you don't have to hide your true self from, where you don't have to fake like, oh, I'm okay. Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, no, everything's great. Or you can just, today is a really rough day. It makes all of the difference. And you know, like the support system that I have right now is either through support groups or through work, because we've all been there. um, and that, and just having, you know, strong, like, you know, with my husband too, you know, we have seen each other at our very worst. And, you know, we have still been there supporting each other, waiting on one another, and just being there, you know. With support, it does go both ways. And that, yeah, is one of the key components is to get out there and find that support who really cares, who wants to see you excel, who wants, you know, to be there when you need them, and who will be there when you need them, who can recognize when you're not okay. And it's possible. And that's why we're here.
I started talking while I was muted. Yeah, I was like, right? Yeah. I mean, I loved that story about you and your friends, you know, checking in 2 or 3 times a week. That's just beautiful. And thinking about support groups, that's just, I mean, that's where a lot of my really solid friendships have come from now. And I love them. I was just also thinking too, kind of, you know, they can be that kind of emotional support, but friends, family. I mean, I know there are a lot of friends and family out there who like want to help, but actually don't have that understanding because they haven't been through it. But you know, folks like that can help with some of the practical stuff, like calling around to find out what coverage options might work for you, might be there to, you know, help you and encourage you with, you know, continuing through, you know, to find the right person, therapist or whoever, you know, whatever program might be best for you, that they can do some of that legwork that is just so hard to do when you're so deeply in crisis. So it's a wonderful gift for, you know, from support systems that aren't, you know, maybe don't always know what to say. Except I can tell you, telling you that they love you, like that counselor did. It was counselor, right? For you, Melanie. I love that. I thought that was beautiful. And so, yeah, that's a beautiful thing. Anything else either of you want to say on what's helpful or not helpful before we move into our next?
Yeah. When I had my first attempt in my youth at 16, my dad constantly said, like, what is wrong with you? Like, and I got punished. I got in really big trouble for my attempt. And I don't think anybody should ever say, like, is it really that bad? Or what's wrong with you? Or we all go through it. Those things are horrible to hear when you're in trauma. And what's really important and what really helped for me is like people not interrupting you and like making it about them and like just really, really listening. You know, sometimes when you're in crisis like that, you don't need the feedback at the time. You just really need to get all that hurt out, especially if you don't at that time have a support system. And so you're just the person that you are talking to, maybe the only person that you'll get the chance to say this to. So it's critical to just solely listen and just be as gentle and like Melanie said, I love you. Like on my second attempt, when somebody at a homeless shelter embraced me so tight, and I was homeless, nobody wanted to hug me, just embraced me so tight and said, you are worth it. You are wanted and needed in this world. You know what I mean? And so I think just really being prepared to do that. And You know, I went to a suicide walk in a little town, you know, that's close to here about a week ago. And it gave me so much hope to see all those survivors there, knowing that they had all been, and they were walking and they were okay. So if you're alone and you're out there and you don't have a support system, if you find a chance to go to a walk like that, go to it. You might find somebody that you can talk to because they've all been there, and you might strike up a friend that has had your similar situation. So do that, you know, because I struck up conversations with people I've never seen before that welcomed me, that understood me. So I recommend doing that. And I recommend going to your county mental health. It doesn't cost to go there. Go to that crisis center as many times as you need to, because you deserve to be heard. If you're having the thoughts, you deserve to be heard. If you're almost doing your attempt, you deserve to be heard. And that was key for me. I just needed to be heard. And you are not your circumstances. That's not who you are. You are not your trauma. You are a human being deserving of understanding and life and hope. And I'm here to tell you, I lived in the depths of hell for many years, but I knew that I didn't die after 3 attempts. At that point, I knew you're supposed to be here. And so at that point, I had to fight, and it was not easy. And I was, you know, I was undiagnosed with things, and I flat out on the reservation, ain't nobody talking about mental health. What is PTSD? I just thought that I was a fucked up individual. And I didn't know why exactly. I mean, I knew that I had problems because of my stuff and my trauma, but I thought that there was something wrong with me personally, that I was a damaged goods, and I was just taking up space and wasting space in this big world, you know. And so what did help was, like I said, the listening and the kindness along the way. And it's just critical if you see somebody out there struggling and you can tell they're having mental health and they're shaking and they're going through all that, just be kind. You know, you don't have to embrace them, but just give them a kind look even, you know, because that might be the thing that makes them not take their lives. So
May I ask, was it those all of those, you know, little points of kindness that, you know, you happened upon as you were in your deep in your struggle that began to help you see your own value and to begin to love yourself? Or was there something else? I'm just curious. You're turning.
there were the acts of kindness, and there were, you know, special people along the way. Like there was a street family in Olympia where I lived, and it was a very, very tight knit community. And there were the ones that I could go to and I could break down. I can break down and say, you know, I'm about ready to do enough drugs to kill myself. You know what I mean? And they would say, no, like, I need you. I can't do this life you know, without you. That was helpful. The people at the shelters, the people that were serving us our meals at the Salvation Army, you would get that nice one in there that would ask you, are you okay? Is there anything I can do to make your life easier? You know, and so, and occasionally a family member, like an auntie or something, would build me up, you know, and give me kind words. But yeah, that was a lot of it. That was a lot of it, because my self-esteem was so low. It's like but knowing that somebody does care along the way even if it's the cashier at McDonald's that smiles big at you or treats you good, even though you're dirty, or, you know, just that alone. And my siblings helped. You know, they tell me I'm pissed at you and you suck, but I need you, you know. So
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I'd love for us to talk a bit about chance as a, you know, one of those programs out there that, you know, could be one of those turning points for someone in your area. And then of course there are, you know, programs all over the country that somebody else, you know, might have it upon, but it would be lovely to learn more about chance. Did you have some specific questions about that, Nobly?
yeah, I just wanted you to like tell us about Chance and the people that, you know, use your services here. You know, what do you do if they verbalize that they want to kill themselves, or that they've had, you know, suicidal thoughts or attempts, or you notice outwardly that, you know, that something is wrong? Is there a particular, you know, like criteria or intervention model that you would do in these circumstances, like when somebody comes into the day center or your guys' shelter?
Okay, so very good question. So when I first, so I'm going to use this story as an example. It happened when I first started working here. I think I may have been my first 2 weeks. I wasn't even a month on the job. Had this young lady who had come in, and she flat out said, "I want to kill myself. I need help." So I ended up getting two of my coworkers. We got her into a nice, quiet, you know how our building's laid out. We actually brought her into the office I'm sitting in now. You know, it's nice and quiet away from all the chaos. I had another coworker sit with her, talk with her, because I was still new and very unsure about myself. And I went and called mental health crisis. And, you know, just through talking and us just offering her that safety net, and, you know, her knowing that, you know, she is cared for and she is valuable and she is worthy, you know, really helped you know, crisis service talk to her for a while. At the time, she did not have a plan. So, you know, that was, you know, a blessing, that she was not quite at that point where she had, you know, didn't have a plan, but she did recognize she was in a crisis. Later on, you know, I have another peer that I work with who struggles constantly with suicidal ideation. And they know that they can always call me, you know, if they are having a crisis. And they also know I'm a mandatory reporter, and I will hop in my car and go to their house, but I will also be calling 911 as I'm driving over there. And I will sit with them and I will go to the hospital with them, and I will be there, you know, for as long as they need me. And that is, you know, I think um, that just knowing, you know, because they're very isolated, and then just, you know, once again, knowing that there is someone there. I've also, like, you know, had them utilize calling crisis service more and more. As far as, like, you know, what action plans we have, we go by what's called the algae action plan. And so what we're supposed to do is assess for the risk of suicide or harm. Listen non-judgmentally. So, we meet the peer where they're at. We listen with an open mind, kindness, compassion. No one is better than anyone else in this world. We are all equal. I don't care what anyone says. We are equal. Um, and then just give reassurance and information, like, providing them, letting them know they're okay. They are maybe not okay, but they're not alone in this. We are here to help. Things will get better. It may not be, they may not feel better instantly, but it does get better. And we are all here at Chance are living proof of that. And also encourage, and can't stress this enough, but we encourage them to seek professional help, because none of us here are, at least myself, and there's quite a few who are not, while we're certified peer support, certified recovery mentors, we are not counselors, we are not therapists, we are not psychiatrists. We cannot offer that professional level of service. And then, also encourage them to seek support through, friends, family, support groups. There are so many support groups, even if they're not in your city or town, there's a ton of them online for whatever possibly, you need support with. Um, NAMI, National Alliance for Mental Illness, I think. I forgot the acronym. That's a really good resource. I have found a lot of groups there. And it's, that has been kind of my go-to for a lot of cases. But it's also about meeting the person, the individual where they're at, and just being open, being compassionate. One thing, when you were talking earlier about how you used to be, what's wrong with you? That puts people on the defensive, without a doubt. I prefer, like, if you're addressing someone, never, never use that. I can't stress that. And I'm so glad you brought that up, Nobly. What happened to you? That's, what happened? And, another thing I really hate hearing is, oh, you're just depressed. That's just being sad. You'll get over it. No, if you don't treat your depression or that, it will eat you, and it will eat you alive. That's why it's so important to seek whatever help you can. Enlist if you're not able to do it, if you don't feel you're capable of doing it, reach out to someone.
I find it amazing that you have somebody right there on site that is caring and, willing to meet them where they are. And in whatever situation that you're in, we are here to help you individually and treating that person just like you would anyone else, but that you have somebody here. I know that somebody's here at all times. And I know if somebody came in crisis, that somebody on the staff, which are all amazing people, would totally talk to that person. And you guys might be that first contact person that talks them out of that. And that is amazing. But outside of that, I know that you guys have a lot of bulletin boards and whatnot, but do you have the suicide crisis centers and, and additional helpful resources like posted up for people to see that maybe aren't ready to like come up to you and ask you, but maybe they have those thoughts? Do you have that information like on your bulletin boards or pamphlets laying around or something along those lines?
Absolutely. We have them on both of our desks. There's a desk in the back that, there's some there. There's some on our actual desk. And then we also have like a pamphlet holder that we do have some. We have it with the 988 crisis line. We also have with Lynn County Mental Health Crisis. And then we also have resources, and pamphlets for the veteran crisis. One thing I really love that I learned today was, and this I'm going to utilize with is the transgender crisis line. And thank you so much for sharing that. I don't know why my video does this, because there is an unmet need for that in this area. There are no support groups for transgender, and just being able to, okay, here, reach out to them.
Yeah. Yeah, and in such a time where folks who are transgendered are under such attack needlessly, might I say, because again, every one of us, I don't care your orientation, your gender identity, it's every one of us is worth so much, and it's so important, and it's important to get the right care and somebody who really knows and understands that. And it's really wonderful that, that there are folks who actually understand the unique challenges faced by people who are transgendered, who, no matter where they are in that process. So yeah. Thanks for calling that out, Melanie.
Absolutely. Megan, do you want to just briefly tell us about the Ask program? Because I think that's kind of important too.
Yeah, I mean, it's so fascinating listening to Chance, which, almost feels, and I know it's a day center, right? So people can walk in and, they may or may not access other kinds of services, but it's a place where people can come in and be safe and and find out about other different things. I love that you have that information out in case somebody's not ready to talk. And it flashed in my head that, oh man, wouldn't it be wonderful if on, the bulletin boards in every workplace where they have information about your rights as an employee, they had information about crisis lines there. Because there are people suffering everywhere, and you never know who's going to come across, if they're going to know about a program like Chance. And, hopefully eventually folks do find out about it. But, the more places we can have that information, the better to catch people at that right moment when they're ready to ask for help. Because I know there were plenty of times I wasn't ready to ask for help. But it was important that I had that information when I was ready. So that's a big deal. And I really think, and that's part of why I really appreciated the training that I went through, which is referred to as a gatekeeper training. So it's basically my novice understanding. My understanding is basically the gatekeeper could be any one of us. It's that person who happens to come across somebody else in crisis, in need, and we have a choice to engage that person, extend a hand, extend our hearts, and just a little bit of time to check in with what's going on with that person, and to help try to get to that person to that professional level of care that you're referring to, Melanie. So I feel like Chance is like this step closer to that professional level of care, right? Because you are trained peer support specialists and maybe other trained folks there too. But, I could be, it could be I'm talking to my nephew and I start to get concerned about his demeanor, or something has changed, and there's some of the comments that he's making. And, and at that point, it's good for me to have the gatekeeper training that I've come across. It could be a complete stranger that I come across. Frankly, there was a time I talk about in my own story where I was standing in the middle of a grocery store parking lot, and I must have looked like a zombie. I was vacant and just still. I was actually at that moment thinking about going inside that grocery store um, to get means to kill myself. And somebody could have asked me, "Hey, what's going on with you?" And had they had then the gatekeeper training that I went through, they'd have a little bit more confidence in being able to check in. Cause I keep hearing that is like, well, I don't know, maybe I'm going to make it worse. And a good friend of mine recently said, oh yeah, people don't, usually think this myth that if you ask if they're thinking about suicide, that's might make them, put the thought in their head if they weren't already thinking about it. When the opposite is really true. So the ask model is this there's a lot of real similarity to what you described, Melanie, what you're doing there. I think on a more kind of layperson way, they really emphasize the language that we use first of all, right? That non-judgmental piece is super important. And that we take, really put the person first when we're talking with them about it. And we're really trying to avoid anything that seems stigmatizing or blaming. And a lot of the old language that we use, I guess, that the commit suicide or the fail or succeed, those terms, like getting rid of those terms, that's not what we're not talking about. There's no success in this process. What we're talking about is somebody in deep distress who is seriously considering ending their lives and needs help, to find hope and to get the right supports to help through to get whatever help they need. So that's the first part that they really, I think, emphasize. And then that ask model, it's 3 S's, ASSSK. Ask without judgment if someone is considering suicide. Check in, seek more information on what's going on. I love that. What happened to you? It's a wonderful, direct, non-judgmental question that kind of fits into that place. See, find out what's going on, what's happened, what they're experiencing, and what they're feeling. Then talking with them about their support systems. Is there somebody that they trust that, maybe they've just been, nervous to go to, or these other support systems, like you're talking about support groups. NAMI, I don't know why I forget about NAMI, but what a great resource. Yes. A Google search, just mental health support groups, crisis support groups, anything like that will get you in your location, can get something really close. And so one of the things I actually talked about, and I think that helps to, for your average person that's, not thinking about this all the time, it's not a part of your work, is, take a few minutes, do that Google search yourself, find out what's in your area. So you can have that in your phone or in your purse or in your wallet or whatever, that it's just on you. You just have it. Maybe you never need it. Hopefully you never need it. But if you do, it'll be a really, really wonderful tool to help you have the confidence, I think, to go and reach out to somebody. So then, then after that ask is, or asking about social supports and other resources. And then they talk about asking about lethal means. So you say assessing risk. I think that's kind of that's in that, it's basically the same thing. So what, do you have a plan? What were you thinking about? Like when I talked to the person at the crisis line and she asked about my plan, and I said, I'm in the middle of my backyard because I have a gun inside with a loaded clip next to it, and I'm trying not to go in and get it. And so she, it's why she was getting me to a crisis clinic, was to get me as far away from that gun as possible. Right. Time and distance, to try to get away, from whatever your means is. And then lastly is to refer to professional help. So, having those, again, having those, professional resources kind of in your back pocket, so to speak, um, is really great. Or if maybe you don't want to stay, you don't feel like you can stay up to date on that, finding out about local programs like Chance that can be like that next stepping stone, would be just a really wonderful thing. Melanie is going to be, you're going to be more educated than I am. Nobly, you too, with the work that you're doing. And I haven't done work in that arena in a really long time, so I'm out of touch, but I could certainly do the effort to find out what kinds of programs are in my area that are going to have wonderful people like the two of you working there and able to help, um, get folks connected with the support resources and have that person. I mean, the crisis line was wonderful. And that next step to actually sit in front of another human being in the same room, in the same space. And it's somehow that much more real, that when they're, felt more real to me and more connected to me. So that's a wonderful step too.
I I actually do carry like CARDVA, which is the domestic violence card, and the 988 card in my wallet. And I also actually bought cards of hope. And they're little tiny cards that are like the size that would go in your wallet, and they have like inspirational quotes. So if I actually see somebody out there, I will give them one of those. And I will have the information ready. Hey, this is what you need. Here's the card. Take it yourself. You know what I mean? I have that ready. I have it with me when I go to work, and it's it's really good.
Oh, I love that. You found them online? You ordered it? Oh, okay. I'm gonna go order some too. That's wonderful. Do you have them too, Melanie?
No, I don't, but I am going to. So you're going to have to share your source. I definitely want to get some. Another thing, when went to a recovery event, Recovery in the Park here in Albany, there was a booth set up with outpatient treatment center, and they were doing the mental health stickers, which I don't have. It's not on this coffee cup, but like, just really inspiring messages. And I are actually, yeah, I do have one right here on my phone. Enjoy every moment, just little inspiring things like that, where I have thought about just leaving them in random places, or, like handing them out like the hope cards,
Mhm.
or just even leaving them on the counter here at Chance with maybe, I really love, I want to get with you, Nobly, and yeah, get that source.
Yeah.
I think that is just a wonderful idea.
Yeah. 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 I love that. I have a ex girlfriend of mine had she's she's a spirit like you, Nobly. She makes these little pipe cleaner flowers and puts little notes on them and leaves them around wherever she goes. I just think it's the most beautiful thing, just trying to help people feel, even if we don't know each other's names, see each other, even, that there's somebody out there who cares about you reaching out, you're eventually going to get to them. You're going to get to one of us, you know?
Right. Even when I give somebody some money that, is flying a sign or something, I'll slip the card in with the money. They probably need to hear something positive. I know I did when I was flying a sign.
For sure. For sure.
Well, if I can share this story real quick, there's a grocery store here called Winco, and they have a bulk food sections, which is just awesome. All kind of like nuts, candies, and spices, just a smorgasbord.
Mhm.
And I was having a really rough day at work, was just really stressed out. Went there to get like a nut mix because, I snack on nuts when I'm at work. And they have these, the bread tie things that are typically, that you twist. Well, that's what you close these bags with, that you put your bulk items in, and then you write the number. And I just grabbed one, wasn't paying attention, wrote the number, got home, and there was this message that someone had handwritten, and I still have it taped to my fridge, where it was like, hope you realize you're worth it and hope you are having an amazing day. You deserve it. And I can't tell you, just that random act, when I got home and I read that, I cried. And I went to Winco and did the same thing, not the same word, but did the same thing, the next day, and just spreading that little bit of encouragement. People don't, realize how much that can change someone's outlook. Just something so small could be so amazing. Yeah. So,
Well, for real, because for some of us, for in periods of our lives, anything that we're getting is pain and loneliness and yeah, when you hit, oh my gosh, that there's like, it's like this parting of the clouds for a moment, even that those little rays of hope are so valuable. made, made me tear up, but whoever that person is out there, thank you. Yeah, and I love that you went back and did it too, Melanie.
firm
So
believer and pay it forward.
yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Well, I had a bunch of other questions that I wanted to ask. We're running, close to the end of when we would normally come. I wonder if y'all have could stay just a little bit longer, and we can kind of touch on these questions maybe in a little bit of a lighter, I don't know. We'll talk about what we need to talk about. That. How about that?
Yeah,
Excellent.
we'll get through the questions, no problem.
Awesome. Well, related to the training, one thing that was new to me, because back in the day, very early on, I had worked as an advocate for survivors of domestic violence. And so that was when I was more trained on various, interventions and what to do if somebody was considering suicide. And so at that time, they trained us to safety plan with somebody. And so I was curious, and they very specifically said in the ask training that not to do that. And so I was curious if you had thoughts on that, Melanie, if that came up in your work, or you too, Nobly, if you have thoughts on this too. But yeah, what's your take on why they
So,
say no? Yeah.
when I was in counseling and therapy, or even in the hospital, yes, it was pretty much ordered, non-negotiable, where I needed to come up with a safety plan. And I resented that. Maybe it was because, I'm still trying to work on that, figure that out. But, to me, it was like, if If I had a safety plan, do you think I would be in this situation I am in now, reaching out for help, wanting, you know, it's, if I had a safety plan, wouldn't I be utilizing it now
Uh,
instead of, I
huh?
don't know. It was just, maybe it's just my stubbornness and hard headedness where I kind of resent being told what I must do. But just the whole idea of safety plan, um, in order to move on with treatment or to be taken seriously, just it really rubbed me the wrong way. And
Mhm.
I think, it's just that lack of understanding but from someone who developed the need for this safety plan without ever having to experience. And with the safety plan, when your mind is in that, when you are in that crisis mode, that's the last thing you're going to think about.
Right.
Um,
It almost feels like it's like something that will make the person who the helper feel better, right? But not actually doing something for the person in crisis. Knowing that, I'm in crisis now. Let's go ahead and help me now. And next time if I end up in crisis again, I mean, hopefully I don't end up in crisis again, but if I do, who knows if this is going to be relevant at all. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. So you touched on a little bit, caught my attention earlier when you talked about being a mandatory reporter. So the next question that comes up for me is how do you navigate the real fear that folks might be hospitalized against their will if they admit they're thinking about suicide? And I ask that because um, I was hospitalized against my will when I was 19. I do think it was ultimately good for me. I got some real help that I really needed. I also had a very expensive hospital bill that I paid off, took me a long time to pay off. I still, again, in retrospect, feel like it's worth it. I wish we had better public systems to take care of that, but in the end I don't have that bill anymore and I'm much better, and those were some of my first building blocks for getting to better. So not ideal. But I also know that when I called the crisis line, I wouldn't give my location because I was afraid they would send me to the hospital, and I was already afraid of losing my I was already teetering on the edge of losing my home. And so I didn't, I couldn't fathom one more dollar in debt that was going to send me to the streets. And so anyway, so that's my background. Curious what you do.
Okay, so like with the financial aspect of a hospital visit here, we are fortunate enough where Samaritan is a not-for-profit hospital. And if you are unable to afford, especially when it comes to mental health or emergency services, they do have programs available where they cover the bill. It's something you have to apply. The admitting nurse will go over that with you. Um, and so they're like with Samaritan, especially, maybe if you need that help, search out a not for profit hospital. Because I imagine most of them, they are about the care of the patient. They are about the care of making sure you are better. Reach out. Maybe that's another thing to do when clear mind. Um, and so with the mandatory reporting, and I have had this come up with, the peer that I was going to their house for because they did not want me to call 911. They did not want to go to the hospital. They have had bad experience with hospitals in other states. And to help them ease that fear, even when the paramedics, because they were giving the paramedics, a difficult time too. It's like, I just assured them, I will go with you. I will be with you. If they do admit you to the hospital, I will come see you. This is a wonderful facility. I am, because this particular hospital is the only one in the area in what, 3 counties, I think, here. Yeah, within the 3 county area. I will go with you. And it's, understanding that there may be trauma associated with other hospital stays, but also recognizing and letting them know this is a safe place. I have been there. And this is where sharing part of your story, part of your experience comes in. Because there is a lot of stigma, there is a lot of negativity associated with the hospitals, especially how they were run, back as recently as the 80s and 90s. It's, but there's another, we have another kind of hospital in the Beaverton area that I've utilized a lot, where is for crisis, whether it's drug-induced, detox or mental health crisis. And I've actually had to take a peer to for the mental health crisis before, and just sitting there, being, that's how I've helped navigate. I can't speak for everyone else, but that is how I've helped navigate that fear, is just by being there, by leaving my card with the admitting nurse, hey, anything, make sure they have my number, let them, reach out to me. And I hope.
I love that, Melanie. I really do. And just that being there really does. I mean, that would have made all the difference in the world for me, because in my, because there's additional trauma that happened at the hospital, like namely being strapped to a gurney and left alone in a hallway for hours and hours and hours. That was terrifying, humiliating. It was awful. And so, yeah, if there's somebody there who's your support and you're, gonna help you understand what's going on, help you get answers when you need them, those kinds of things. So yeah, if you're like a gatekeeper, kind of person, that you can, offer to be there, or and if that's not something that you can do, maybe you can help kind of connect with an organization like, with staff like you, with advocates, with peer support, who would be available and would offer that kind of support as well to go through the process. Certainly family members could fill that role. I mean, if they're safe family members. Obviously, I think we all recognize that not every family member is a safe family member. But if they are, that could be really good. So
sometimes what I do as a mandatory reporter too is I tell them, I'm a mandatory reporter, but we don't have to go that route. I'm here right now and we can get through this together, or else we can call, the crisis line. So because you're a mandatory reporter, it's kind of important for you to be, like you said, trained and ready to talk this person down, so that hopefully you don't have to call the authorities. But Melanie is right. I had a situation where I was admitted to the hospital here in Corvallis on my second suicide attempt, and I had to stay there for some time. And I was sent to the hospital social worker. She filled out the paperwork. 100% my bill was wrote off. So if you could find out at St. Peter and the Olympic, I mean, wherever you are, you could see if they have that available. But it's important to train yourself, like you're saying, and be educated for when you come across that situation, what does work.
yeah, that's a great idea. I like the idea. I'll add this to my resources. Is I'll do a search for the not-for-profit hospitals in my area, in order to have that information at my fingertips too. That's an awesome awesome tip. Yeah, because it's like insult to injury, like to have thousands and thousands. I mean, that was 30 years ago and it was $13,000. Um, and I was 19. So- yeah. So anyway, that's great information. Two more questions. One I think we've mostly answered already, but I still want to like just kind of wrap up with that one. So quickly, what do you recommend after having a conversation about suicidal thoughts? Because so often it's like we focus on that point, and then you just go away. I think sometimes people get anxious and nervous. Like, how do I talk? Do I play it? Do I not talk about it again? What? Yeah.
What I do is I definitely follow up. It's not, like say a crisis happens on such and such night. I follow up the next day, check in, see how they're feeling. And, I have found it to be more beneficial to not hide from the problem, not, pretend like it never happened, but address it and, try to find out where the person is at, the individual is at that time. Find out, ask open-ended questions, not questions like, are you okay today? Where they can just say yes or no, but instead like, how are you feeling today? Emphasize self-care and meditation, especially when the feelings, I know not in crisis so much, but when those feelings of anxiousness and just being wound up, that energy, that negative energy that really precedes that crisis, practice meditation or get out, just practice self-care. I think that is something that is not addressed as much as it should be until after, after the fact. But whether self-care for you is music, getting out in nature, playing with a pet, dinner with friends, a spa day, if you can afford it, which, you know, or, guided meditations. There's some really good on YouTube. I use Jason Stevenson a lot. I find his voice to be very soothing, and he has it for depression, sleep, anxiety, and but just definitely following up and checking in with your friend, whoever, checking in constantly and not just sweeping it under the rug, reaching out. Okay, like my other friend and I, how's your mental health? And not how are you doing today, but how's your mental health? Because like when asking how are you doing today, have a tendency going off, oh, work has been it's been crazy at work, talk about work or talk about, other things while avoiding, the real issue, but utilize how's your mental health today and not giving up.
You're really opening the door for, a real honest response and not just letting that person have to open the door themselves. So it's a real gift to ask a question like that. Yeah. I love that. I would, one other thing I was thinking about those kind of follow-up things that it's, when things are, a little cooler, right? So in those follow-ups, one of my go-tos is from recovery, which is the advice I got in AA about, and from my sponsor would make me start every day saying 3 things I was grateful for, no matter how small they were. She'd be like, find it. You search and you find 3 things that you are grateful for today, every day. And she's like, I don't care if it's your cup of coffee, you had a warm place to sleep last night, if you didn't have a warm place to sleep last night, you were safe, whatever it is that you're doing that each time. And I definitely felt like that was like create a little ladder for me to climb on, and move, get stronger and stronger each time I got a sense, like help me kind of focus in on those parts, those building blocks that I really needed in my life. Yeah.
What also helped for me is like in the follow-up, say you're checking on them the next day or the next day after that. And if you have an opportunity to like take them, invite them on a walk or, out to coffee or something that's not just sitting, at the house or something, like go out a little bit, because that also lets them know that what they're going through matters to you.
Hmm.
And that you're available to them because you're willing to take that extra step of buying you a cup of coffee or we have a place here called Talking Waters. It's a very serene place. Hey, let's go walk around Talking Waters and talk about it. Let's talk about our mental health as we walk around Talking Waters. You know what I mean? Because then you're out and you're feeling free and you're with somebody that you feel has made enough time to take you out there and hear you. That to me is like would mean the world and meant the world.
And you're literally not alone. I used to drive me so nuts when people, like I mentioned earlier, that, well, you should be in counseling, kind of. That used to drive me so nuts for a number of reasons. But one of them was that it just felt like they were just trying to get me out of the way, right? Like, you go be somebody else's problem. And it really told me I did not matter. Or affirmed to me that I didn't matter. And and I felt like, sweeping me off to some dark room where that's the only place we can talk about my nasty secrets and, things like that. And that's just not, it's just not so. And, yeah, so
That's
I love
exactly what
that.
that does.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh, good stuff. Really good stuff. Emphasize follow up, check in, ask, open the door. Yeah, and be there. So beautiful. So now back to, possible gatekeepers, right? What can all of us do for somebody else in Christ? Of course, we've been talking about the whole time. So to help get people prepared for that, what do you recommend that folks do to prepare themselves so they can be that effective gatekeeper and be part of the solution? Any recommended reading, training, anything in particular that either of you can think of?
I would definitely do a Google search because everything depends on your area. But there are some really good classes and seminars training for suicide prevention. Very valuable information. Biggest part is educating yourself and having those resources, where they're either close by or easy access when, if or when that time does come. Just being prepared, as the gatekeeper. Okay, so this is what's going on. Let's get you here. You're here right now. Let's get you here. And this is how we're going to do it. And not everything is cookie cutter. There's what's going to work for, and just understanding what's going to work for one person may not work for another person, and just being able to adapt to each individual's, needs. And another thing is not making it all about, and I think Nobly and I had talked about this briefly, not making it about you. Making it about this person you are trying to help, this person you love, this person, making it known that they are worthy, they are loved, and people do care. And just get that selfish, and also listen. I've heard this term over and over and over again. Is, so many people listen to respond instead of listen to hear. And just learning how you can shift your mind to where you're actually listening to them and not just waiting for oh, how am I going to do this story? And I'm not, maybe not that extreme, but how am I going to match this story? Or, what am I going to do, to outdo them, so to speak?
Also, one thing for me that I did was I Googled suicide stories, people that had told their stories, and they talk about in their stories what worked for them. And that's also another way, if you're trying to be a gatekeeper, sometimes it's hard to listen to a bunch of the stories. And so if it's too hard for you, if something triggers, you don't have to, but if you're up for it, I watched a couple, and I got some helpful hints from those stories that I listened to. They have some short stories. If you Google that, it'll come up, and they have several different stories that you can choose from, all kinds of different reasons and attempts and situations. So I found that also to be helpful. And also, I think Melanie said, if you Google free, suicide prevention trainings, there's a number of trainings that will come up. Find the one that looks like it best suits you, and do the Zoom. They have Zoom meetings even, where it's a group learning setting, and just get in there with other people that are trying to educate themselves, and everybody come together and share their resources and share what they know, because that's also going to get more people to be gatekeepers. That will open up the horizon for sharing your resources and experiences, strength, and hope with other people that are going to do the same, and then they'll be able to reach more people in their community or in their personal lives.
Right. Just talking with other people who are looking to provide that kind of support. Yeah. I mean, just gets comfort, saying the word suicide, talking about how we have these conversations. I love also your suggestion for listening to stories. Can you say again what specifically folks should Google for that to find the stories?
I just Googled stories of suicide. I mean, like suicide stories. That's it, just in my Google search.
Nice.
And then there's some options that come up. And as you're going down your options, you'll see the videos. And then you just click on the videos.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's
You're
wonderful. The other thing is I did put on our community wisdom website on our resources page. I had came across a document with like pages and pages of different kinds of suicide prevention trainings. And some for, geared toward teachers, some geared toward parents, some, so like different kinds of relationships. So, I would encourage you to go on there. You can find that and kind of dig through that and see if there's something there that would also be of interest to you too. So it actually took me quite a few clicks to get to that particular table. So I was like, let me just help folks get straight to this. So I got a little frustrated along the way trying to get there. I've also recently come across the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And they have a number of different kind of entry points on their website. So whether you are somebody in crisis, They've got a whole like pathway and resources for you. If you're looking to be a volunteer and help and part of the solution, they've got, pathways for you there as well. The other thing I wanted to say is, in addition to being a gatekeeper, that we very clearly need more resources to go into this work, to pay people who are doing this work, to pay more people to do this work, and to expand the information that is distributed out there in our communities, so people don't have to get to that point where they're being hospitalized in order to find out about these things for the first time. Right. So, trying to intervene earlier. So I have recently learned about the advocacy work that that American Foundation for Suicide Prevention is doing. And I actually just sent off a letter to my congressional representatives today, advocating for more resources to be going into the 988 system. And so that's what they're asking for now. They also have legislation going through around mental health parity, meaning providing the same, equal resources for mental health care as in physical health care. And so trying to, really trying to increase there. So there's lots of different things. There's specific advocacy around resources for LGBTQ, in particular trans communities, that I just that is really important, with groups of folks who are in pretty high risk, given the climate in this country. And so anyway, I would encourage folks that, we can help people directly, and get ourselves trained, educated, learn more and more about if we don't have that experience ourselves, to learn more about that. And we can tell our policymakers and decision makers that this really matters to us, and we're going to hold them accountable for it. That's my little political pitch for the day. And the cool thing, by the way, if you sign up as a volunteer advocate with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, NAMI may have this too, other organizations like that may have this too, but they will actually send you stock letters that you can just send those on, and they'll, you put in your information about where you are. So they'll give you the letter addressed to your specific representatives, and that you could also go in there and edit it. So that's what I did. I went in and told my story added that into this letter, to tell them why I cared so much, and sent those off. So they make it really easy to make your voice heard, and it does matter. So, okay. So with that, thank you so much, Melanie. Nobly, thank you for bringing Melanie into this conversation. You have been amazing. Thank you for the work you do every day. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your courage. You mattered. Mm-hmm. And so,
Yes. Sorry, I just want to say thank you. This has been, everything that you've said here has been very important, and sorry, and I just really appreciate you.
Well, thank you for having me. I was really anxious and nervous, but this is an important topic, and we do matter. And I am, thank you, both of y'all, for, at least allowing me to, share my story, share some resources that, are ideas, that are available, in hopes it will help others. So that means a lot.
it's a real gift. It's a real gift. Thank you. So we'd love to have you stick around. We close out every one of these conversations with what we refer to as the first two medicines, water and laughter. And so I want to make a little announcement about our next discussion, and then we'll close out with those two medicines if you wouldn't mind sticking around with us. Great. So just quick announcement for our October discussion. We are looking to make space for really listening to another person's story of survival. What we do to get through these really difficult times in our lives. And we're currently talking with a few different folks about that. So we're not prepared to announce that person or potentially people to join us in October. But we're wanting to do more and more of that. So if you are listening or watching and want to share your story, we'd love to give you that space and share that space with you. So please do reach out to us. You can contact us through our Facebook page or through the links on the Community Wisdom website. So we and of course you can always in that join sign up on a mailing list as well, just to find out kind of what is coming up next, since we're not able to announce it here, or just keep checking back, and we look forward to continuing the conversation next month. So with that, how about a little laughter, Nobly?
Okay, you got to cut me a break because sorry, something's going on with my computer. Is there a line showing? No. Okay. My joke is, so cut me a break. But why isn't Cinderella good at soccer?
I don't know.
Because she always runs from the ball.
I love it.
Thought it was really cute, but I'm like, I don't know if they're gonna like it or not.
Oh, it's so cute. It actually reminds me of the one season my parents tried to force me through soccer when I was a little kid, and I always ran through the ball. So I immediately thought, man, I was a little Cinderella. Hey, look, we have somebody saying hello. Hi, Yoda. A little love. Love is good medicine too.
Yes, it is.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, thank you. That was so much fun to laugh with your joke, and such a great conversation tonight. Cheers to you both, to everyone out there. Love you.
Love you.
Love you.
Mhm.